Let's begin by telling you that the federal government of Nigeria has advised organized labor to consider the broader economic implications of its push for what it called an unrealistic higher national minimum wage. Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, who gave the admonition while speaking at the opening of the 2024 Synod of the Charismatic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria in Abuja, noted that the 250,000 naira minimum wage demanded by labor could undermine the economy, lead to mass retrenchment of workers, and jeopardize the welfare of Nigerians. The minister emphasized the importance of a realistic wage system that safeguards against mass retrenchment while addressing workers' needs. Idris reiterated the government's dedication to reassessing the minimum wage, but cautioned against demands that could disrupt the economy. To discuss this, I'm joined by Economic Analyst Olusesan Okunade. Hello, Olusesan. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Yeah, good evening, Darshan, and good evening to all our viewers across the globe. Great to be here this evening.
Yes, indeed. Okay, Olusesan, now, in your expert's opinion, what do you think would be a realistic and sustainable minimum wage increase that balances workers' needs and economic stability?
Yeah, thank you very much, Darshan. And I think that's a good question and a good place to start. Asking that question, we need to give a right perspective to what entails a right and a realistic minimum wage. I think at this point in time, I've said it in different fora, and I'm still emphasizing it, that labor seems to be misprioritizing their request by asking for increase in minimum wage. If we go back to history, we have minimum wage increase from 7.5 to 18,000, from 18,000 to 30,000, of which we are currently asking for the review. But when you look at the purchasing power of an average citizen, as these things are being increased, they keep reducing, and our ways of living keep getting deteriorated. So I feel that if you ask me, of which it sounds unpopular, what we should be fighting for is that keep the minimum wage at 30,000. But can you look at other parameters that makes life more meaningful? Take, for example, the energy cost, which is on the high side for you and I, and an average organized private sector who is actually bleeding and could not survive the cost of this energy, leading to retrenchment of people, even without increasing the personnel cost. Can we speak to government to say the subsidy that you consider that is gone, this increment that you want to give, can we have a perspective of you investing the money in bringing up our refinery in such a way that we can afford to buy fuel at the rate of maybe 100 or 150 naira per liter, which drastically will reduce the cost of food, it will reduce the cost of logistics, and we give an average businessman to compete favorably with other people that they are actually making their production. That's when I can tell you this, that even the few things we are producing in this country cannot compete favorably with those that are actually being imported, despite the huge cost of foreign exchange. The second aspect of it is to see how the organized labor can tap into having a single-digit interest rate where they can borrow and invest massively. Because when you look at it, we have natural resources that we are blessed with, and all we need is to synergize in such a way to explore that natural resources, process it here to create employment for our people. But the access to funds is very key, of which, as we speak, interest rate is about 26%. How can we speak to government bringing down the inflation rate? How can we bring out food inflation rate? As we speak, I'm sure, Darshan, you are a lady and you prepare food always. I know the cost of even people buying food stuff as we speak. It was a topic that we had even in my office this morning.
Well, all right.
Even
yes,
people are surviving.
Now, when you hear the government say things like, the amount that labor is demanding for will shut down the economy, or, will cause retrenchments, of civil servants, it feels like a threat. How well do you think the government is communicating its economic policies and relief measures to the public? And how well do you think the government is actually communicating, everything that has to do with the national minimum wage to the public?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dasha. To me, it's not a threat because I've seen several people ask me question that it seems I'm on the side of the government, but I'm only being realistic as an economist and also an employer of labor. As we speak, you ask yourself if the minimum wage is increased to even 62,000, an average person, it's going to affect the revised in the payment that you do across board for every employee of yours. And that is why they are paying 30,000. I'm sure you know that most of the organized private sector, who we consider as the highest employer of labor, are not paying that. So by the time you skyrocket it to 62,000, maybe an individual of them will be paying as much as 100,000. And don't forget one thing, immediately you have an increase in salary, even by the federal government. The woman selling pepper on the road cannot distinct who is a civil servant, who is a private sector employee. All he knows is that, congratulations, they've increased your salary. And all the things that they've been selling at a minimal rate now go high up there. I feel it's not a threat, but it's a realistic thing, which I expect the labor to say, okay, rather than asking for increment in this thing, the money that you will use in paying salary, can you use it to fix our refinery and make sure you drop the cost of petrol? See, the major problem you and I are currently facing is the three statement by Mr. President. Subsidy is gone. What are the alternative measures that they have put? Some of us were thinking that economically, we would have seen them invest the money in infrastructure, like bringing up our refinery to reduce the cost of production. But what we heard is that they've given the money to the state. How many of the states can actually benefit from so much money that are given to them? It is not visible. So I feel that rather than asking for an increase in wages, we should engage the government the more constructively in such a way that we can expand the scope of our production, which is currently not visible. We can engage them in making sure that security is nipped at the bud. Insecurity is nipped at the bud to secure the people in such a way that I can have access to other states, take the raw materials that I needed, and also nip corruption at the bud. Each day we wake up and we hear of so much money in the hands of very few oppressing the people. I think these are areas we expect the government, because I will always say, the very few that the government are saying, about 1.2 million, that is employee of who are the civil servant, how many of them compared to millions of other employers that we're saying? And these are part of the people that formulate the policy. How do you speak to our refinery working for years without any production, and we keep having turnaround maintenance, and people are being paid for working in that sector?
All right, Olusesan. Now let's backtrack a bit. About previous adjustments to the minimum wage. In Nigeria, how have these adjustments, affected the economy and also the employment rates? If you're looking at how, if you're listening to what the government is saying about, the economy going to shut down, or retrenchments and all that, how have the previous adjustments affected the economy and employment rates? Are there lessons to be learned from the past experiences?
Yeah, I will say this, Dasha. If you look at the statistics of our unemployment before the increment of wages from 18 to 30,000 years back, you discover that it ranges between 12 to 15%. As we speak, NBS is giving us a figure of unemployment rate that is as high as 35%. And it's to tell you that there are a lot of people that have actually been retrenched, not because the company is really not survived. Don't forget, we just came out of COVID that actually brought so many organizations down. But I always want to narrow it to our country, Nigeria. Rather than we having more organizations come into the country and grow the economy, we have very many of them exiting the shore of the company, and it's worrisome. You just heard recently of the exit of Guinness, the major stakeholders handing over to people. Imagine the value chain of that particular organization. We've heard P&G left this country. We've had other organizations that are into production. God are the years in the 70s when we can produce tires here, where we manufacture vehicles, where we manufacture fabrics, where we manufacture other things that contribute meaningfully, and we can spread it. But as we speak, everybody is only running after government job, of which is not sustainable, because how many can the government employ? You need to enhance the small, medium enterprise, the medium scale enterprise, for you to have a broad brain of economic growth.
Well, would love to thank you for your time with us here and speaking to us on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me this evening.